So Warwick University is based in the UK. It's one of the larger UK universities, research-led, looks pretty much like a standard university undergraduates, postgraduates. My affiliation within that is with the Centre for Scientific Computing. The CSC really does three main activities, I guess. The first is it's a research centre. So it kind of collects together all the computational science that gets done in departments around the university, provides a central location for collaboration on a number of levels. The second thing is HPC service provision. And the third thing is teaching and training. So those are the three main activities of the CSC. Okay, so just to give some context to how things work in the UK, I think we typically like to think of our HPC as a pyramid. Our HPC ecosystem is in a kind of pyramidal hierarchical structure. There's plenty of tier 3 in the UK. There are a number of universities around that have substantial local HPC facilities. We have quite a strong national facility, a facility called Hector, which some of you may have heard of. It's based on a large Cray system. And tier 0, well, we tend to collaborate with our European partners on that sort of stuff, so we get involved in activities like PRACE, for example. The tier that perhaps is not as well developed as it should be right now is the tier 2. So this is the grid and regional computing part of this. So that's kind of been recognised. At the end of last year, some funding was found to facilitate the development of that tier 2, if you like, to seed corn the development of regional facilities. Out of that, 5 regional centres were funded. I'm involved in one of them. And the remit of these centres is really to encourage collaboration between universities and also between universities and industry. There's sort of a recognition that a lot of local university type systems would like to be doing this kind of things, but their systems are just too busy to schedule the time. So this provides additional capacity to enable us to undertake those additional activities. So in practice, that's led to people, rather than an additional tier sitting above tier 3, actually extending their local facilities. So that's how it works. So the regional centre I'm involved in is called MidPlus. That name is derived from the fact that we're based in the Midlands in the UK. We have three other partner universities. Warwick, number 1 here, is the lead site. Where's John? John from Birmingham University is sitting just over there. They're our second partner. Nottingham University up here, and I guess we're kind of pushing about the definition of a region by reaching out to London, all the way to London, with Queen Mary University. But that gives us additional opportunities. There are industries in London that we'd like to work with that we wouldn't be able to access otherwise. What's the remit of this centre? Well, on paper it's a centre of excellence for computational sciences, engineering and mathematics, so all the kind of traditional disciplines that use HPC, but also with the remit to reach out to non-traditional disciplines as well. Of course, we're a provider of the infrastructure, that's kind of the point. But as a university, we're also very interested in putting a lot of expertise around that. We already do a lot of teaching and training through the Centre for Scientific Computing, so there's no reason why that shouldn't be a really important part of this regional centre as well. Of course, we're geographically distributed, but also very multidisciplinary, and the potential for industry collaboration also means we're kind of crossing those cultural boundaries as well. And that has an impact when you decide how you want to service these guys on the cluster. So what new infrastructure have we actually provided? In Warwick we have around 5,000 cores, sort of capability cores. By capability I mean those are InfiniBand connected. You could run on the whole machine if you wanted to. This happens to be an IBM iDataplex system. It looks like a fairly typical IBM system, GPFS storage, XCAP managed, Talk and Moab. We're on Moab 7 at the moment and Talk 303. So that's the facility we have in Warwick. Queen Mary, 1,300 capacity cores, so that's more for high throughput type workloads, anything that's embarrassingly parallel, anything that doesn't need the high bandwidth or the low latency of an InfiniBand network. And then at Birmingham and Nottingham universities, they're taking care of the data side of this, so they're bringing up a multi-petabyte data archive. So that will be their involvement. So that's pretty much how the facilities are going to look, or do look rather. Now in terms of how we manage the usage on those, for the university level usage, so we already have a lot of, in Warwick we already have a lot of internal departments who are existing customers. They're used to using our central HPC facility. For them, it's a fair share based usage model. And that's what I'm going to talk more about in a minute. And we plan to extend that model to our 3 other partner universities in the region. For the industrial usage, we're looking at more of a reservation-based model there. So what we envisage happening is people coming in, essentially buying a fixed block of time, a fixed-sized part of the machine for a certain amount of time. So that means it's going to be probably a standing reservation. And Brian's already gone into standing reservations in depth in the previous slide, so I won't say too much more about reservations. I just wanted to summarise the type of workload that we're trying to manage here. So we have a lot of different departments within the university who have all bought into the cluster at different levels. And we also have 3 other universities now as well to accommodate on this system. The system's free at the point of use, so we don't bill anybody, we don't manage any allocations. The cluster is there for people to use, and the user does not pay for it. It's quite an oversubscribed system because of that, so there's a lot of contention for cycles. Some departments will try to submit hugely more jobs than their share in theory should allow them to. So that can kind of get interesting. And it is very much a mixed workload that we're trying to manage. So our life scientists, for example, like to submit serial jobs, whereas the more traditional HPC users, such as the physicists and the chemists, they're very much doing parallel stuff. So we're also having to try and balance that capacity and more capability workload. So why? Sorry, should have happened. Was that my fault? So why do we use fair share, or what is fair share? Well, it's a way to compute job priority based on the usage history of whatever credential it is that you set your fair share up to use. So that could be a user, or it could be an account, or it could be a Moab class, or it could be a group. So yeah, any Moab credential. We like fair share because even when some of the shares are not being fully utilised, those shares become available to other people. So that keeps the utilisation high. Nobody ever runs out of time with this kind of setup. It's probably worth saying that Moab supports 2 different fair share models. The first is just a flat model where you just simply define a fair share target, and the system tries to adjust the job priority so that target is met. And the second is hierarchical fair share. That's the one we use, and I'll just say a bit more about that in a few moments. The nice thing about the hierarchical fair share is it allows you to design shares within shares, and I'll say why that's important in a moment. One thing you'll have to decide upon if you're going to implement fair share is exactly how much you want the historical usage to contribute to the job priority. So Moab has a number of configurable parameters that allow you to define that. So these are the three of interest. The first is the FS interval, right? So that's basically the time window that you want to take into account, that you want to sample the user's usage over. The second parameter is the fair share depth. So that's the number of those intervals that you want to take into account. So if, for example, I set my interval to 48 hours and my depth to 7, I'd be saying that I'd be taking into account, let's get this right, 2 weeks worth of usage history. Okay. And then I'm going to decay that usage according to whatever I set as my FS decay parameter. So, I mean, typical values that get set for this are, well, it can be a number between 0 and 1. So if I set it to 0.75, this red line will show you how the usage is going to decay over 7 fair share windows. So what this would mean is, taking my example of 48 hours and 7 windows from before, that by the time we're out of the 7th window, that 2-week-old usage history is not really contributing very much to the job priority. But the usage from 3 or 4 days ago is having a big contribution. So that's hopefully fairly straightforward. There are a couple of weights that you have to switch on within Moab to get this to take effect. The FS weight, you need to set the one. If you set it to 0, fair share will be implemented, but it won't have any effect on the priority. And then whatever credential you want to use for your fair share. So we use the Moab account, is the one we use, and I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. So how do you go about defining a hierarchical fair share setup? Well, let's do the visual part of it first. You define a root number of shares, and then you can assign those shares to various groups. So here are my 4 regional computing centre universities, and I can give each of those a share of this on top of the share. Now I can go down to the next layer and I can say, right, in Warwick I've got a number of departments, and I want them to have a certain amount of share of the Warwick share. And then I can break it down again and say, right, physics, we've got various research groups within their departments, and they want a certain fraction each of the physics share. And the advantage of doing it this way is you get to control where your unused shares go. So let's say, for example, chemistry has some unused shares this week, right? I don't really want those going to another university in preference to other Warwick users. So this hierarchy ensures that these other departments get first refusal on those unused shares ahead of these guys. So that's useful for some people. In terms of the Moab.cfg configuration, you need the FS tree parameter, and you can put a label on that. And then you define the number of shares that you want to associate with that entity, and you say who should be able to access it. So here are my 4 universities defined up here. And then for each one of these, I make another FS tree entry until eventually I get down to a Moab credential, which in this case is an account. So this would be sort of the bottom of the tree. So it doesn't have to be an account. It could be a user or a group or a class, however you choose to set it up. So that's how you implement hierarchical fair share. Does it actually work in practice? Well, yes, it does pretty much. There are a few things that you have to watch. I'm going to have to speed up here because I've only got a few minutes left. If you implement your fair share with an account, you have multiple users submitting to that account. So if you use backfilling, that can actually lead to some interesting effects, because you might have a number of jobs sitting in the queue with different users against the same account. And backfilling might not run in priority order. So you might have a parallel job sitting at the top of that, but the priority of that might actually go down as lower priority jobs get backfilled through. So to get around that, you need to carefully control your priority. Does everyone know what I mean by priority reservation? Does anyone not? Yeah, good. Okay. So you can set reservation depth according to a QoS. So you can break your workload down then according to how it looks. So by that I mean it might not make sense to put a priority reservation on a short serial job, for example. So you can set up your QoS so only the jobs that need reservations get reservations. Okay, now in the interest of time I'm going to skip ahead and just look at some of the other priority weights that you might want to bring into fair share. We use these as a kind of second ordering, if you like. So we take the main priority of fair share, but within an account, we also sort the jobs based on these. So we like to make sure that parallel jobs within an account get the highest priority. So you can do that with the processor weight. And then depending on what your site policy is, you might want to switch on some of these other weights, a queue time weight or an X factor weight, depending on what your preference is. Probably just about out of time. And I think we all know about n type minus p, which gives you nice control over seeing what's going on with your job priorities. That's all I have to say. Have we got any time for questions?